Trust me, y'all. I don't want to do this. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I'm your host, John Del Rey. Yeah, I said yesterday that there was a plan. That, we were going to do players that were going to take it to the next level yesterday, and then today was going to be players that were going to fall a little bit back down to earth, and then Matt Schneidman of The Athletic decided in the middle of the night, it felt like, because everyone just woke up to it, that he was going to publish this bombshell, this blockbuster, this Aaron Rodgers exclusive that he got for The Athletic. And the way that he framed this was basically he messaged Aaron, talked to Aaron somehow, and said, hey, lots of stories circulating Green Bay about you. Care to respond? And then he did. And he actually called up Schneidman and wanted the chance to talk. And so Schneidman put that down. And here we are with what is certain to be one of the pieces of journalism, one of the pieces of writing that years from now, when we look back at the Aaron Rodgers saga, the divorce, the breakup, the split, what went wrong for those think pieces that are going to happen in 5 years, this is going to be one of the pieces of sports literature that we fall back on and look at to get a sense of the time, to get a good, proper contextual frame around what were the parties thinking. And this piece happens to represent the Rodgers side of thing with quotes from Rodgers, which has been, I don't want to say rare to this point, because Rodgers certainly isn't afraid to talk a lot, but this offers insights and details into things that we had not previously known. Some. So I'm going to go through the article on the whole. Now, if you were really looking forward, if you're a regular here on the channel and you're really looking forward to finding out which Packers are probably going to take a step back next year because you're just a glutton for punishment, I'm still going to put that out on Friday. That's just going to cap off the week as opposed to being today. I felt, though, and here's the thing I'm going to say, too. Before we dive into this, look, I struggled with this all day. I woke up, just like everyone else, to this article from Matt Schneidman. Thank you so much. And I really battled with this. And I said to myself, do I even want to talk about this? Am I just going to make everybody angry? Am I just going to make myself angry? Yeah, probably. But here's the thing. As I said earlier, this is probably going to be one of the marquee pieces that we look back on in a few years. And in addition to that, when Brian Gutekunst talked at the NFL owner meetings leading up to the trade, since the trade, when one of the two major players has actually spoken, I've covered it because that's legitimate news. That's not conjecture. That's not speculation. That's them straight up saying stuff. And Aaron Rodgers, talking to one of the Packers reporters, is pretty direct. And I kind of honestly have felt like if I don't talk about this, it's negligence on my part. To just put up this stone wall of he's not a Packer, I'm not talking about him. It just felt like, I don't know, felt like I was being negligent. Felt like I was purposefully ignoring a rather large topic. And trust me, if you know me at all, I'm not covering this topic just to make sure that people click. No, I don't need or want that. No, but I do feel as though I needed to cover this topic, especially for people that don't have The Athletic, especially for people who like my opinion on matters and goings-ons of the Packers, because this offseason is going to be one of the bigger ones setting up the future of the team, and details are important. So let's dive into this article. Basically, the way that I'm going to work through this is I'm going to go through the article. I'm going to pull out some key quotes. I'm not going to read the full article. That's just straight up theft. So what I am going to do is I'm going to highlight key quotes from Rodgers, offering my takes as we go, and then sum it all up at the end. But here's what I can say, unequivocally, from the get-go. Number one, the straw that broke the camel's back when it came to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers was the drafting of Jordan Love. And that's kind of simple, right? I mean, sure, there was Kumaro, there was Jordy Nelson, there was all of Rodgers' friends that have left town. But the thing that really did it, and it becomes pretty clear in this piece, was the drafting of Jordan Love. And that's how Schneidman starts the piece. There's just no doubt about that. Okay, so now let's fast forward a little bit to Love being on the team. We're through this relationship. We're done with 2020. Love has just had his rookie year, be it COVID ball. Packers have just lost the NFC Championship. And Rodgers says basically, like, hey, it says right after the NFC Championship game that, like, his future is a question, right? That's the first time he truly did it that much. And here's the exact quote from Rodgers about what he was thinking at the time. He said, I knew that Love was also always a possibility that they would want to go, you know what? We tried hard. We tried to win a championship. We had a good team. But now it might be time to go with Jordan, move some contract stuff around, and do that. Now, Schneidman writing here just says, Rodgers has been on the other end of this, almost note for note. At 21, of course, he was the unexpected pick when Favre was still quarterback. But then Schneidman kind of caps off the paragraph with this. The major difference, 2 of Favre's campaigns with Rodgers on the bench were subpar, while Rodgers won MVPs with Love looking on in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Now, a lot of people are going to use that just to say, well, the Packers never should have picked Love in the first place. Okay, but like Rodgers wasn't winning MVPs pre-Love. In fact, remember, like look at his stat line of his first year with LaFleur. Still was allergic to interceptions, no doubt, but he wasn't exactly lighting box scores on fire. And before LaFleur coming in, go back to those last couple McCarthy years, again, not exactly great. It did look, by all accounts, that Rodgers was, at the very least, not capable of that much magic anymore. And the MVPs in 2021 were, frankly, pretty surprising. But more importantly, I think that this section really lends itself to 2 different theories. And one theory that's been out there for a long time was that Rodgers felt that if he played well enough, like if really well enough, that he may outlive or outlast Jordan Love on the Packers roster. In parallel to that, it also lends itself to the theory that Rodgers winning 2 MVPs royally messed up the Packers' succession plan. Because, I mean, Rodgers says it himself. He always knew that they were a possibility, that like, hey, but Rodgers doesn't say it, but you just know he's also thinking, but they're not going to do that when the Super Bowl window is open, right? The next section of the article touches on something rather huge, and this is what you're going to see a lot of headlines about today, tomorrow, in perpetuity. According to a source associated with the team who was granted anonymity, whatever it is, to candidly discuss the sensitive dynamics between the front office and the star quarterback early in the 2021 offseason, Dunn, Rodgers' agent, called Packers president Mark Murphy with a request. Fire Gutekunst or trade Rodgers. Murphy did neither. Months later, news broke that Rodgers wanted out of Green Bay, but the Packers held firm. When asked about the demand last week, Rodgers deferred to Dunn, who did not reply for comment to The Athletic. Of course. But here's the thing. For a while now, Rodgers has denied the fact that he called for Brian Gutekunst's head. And you're right. Maybe technically Aaron Rodgers didn't do it. But Aaron Rodgers' agent, David Dunn, isn't exactly calling up Mark Murphy on his own and demanding the GM's head. So now we have it here. Now, this is coming from the Packers' side of things. This did not come from a direct quote from Gutekunst, Murphy, or Rodgers. But the thing is here, Rodgers has denied for a long time that he called for Gutekunst's head. Well, can't deny that much anymore, because now what has long been rumored suddenly has been put as pen to paper from an anonymous source. So, think about what you will, but ultimately, at the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers, because of the culture, because of communication, wanted Brian Gutekunst gone. And if Brian Gutekunst wasn't going to go, Aaron Rodgers wanted to go. Moving on to another section, Rodgers is asked about he's asked about his airing of grievances. That infamous press conference where Rodgers came back and after practice basically just blasted his employer for a solid, I think it was an hour or something, just talking constantly about everything that the Packers do wrong, all the players that they've let go, all of this, right? And he's asked about, did things improve thereafter? And he says this, I mean, Russ definitely made an effort to be more seen, to be a better communicator, to be around more, to interact with the guys more. And I really appreciated his effort to grow and to listen to some of the things I was saying and to try to make the culture and the place a better environment. I thought Russ, more than anybody, really showed that he cared and showed a lot of personal growth, and I give him credit for that. In which case, hey, if this is true, shout out Russ Ball. I mean, Russ Ball very often is painted as like the awkward numbers guy. Like, that's kind of the narrative around him, that like social skills are not exactly his deal, and that might be part of the reason he didn't get the GM job and they were figuring out who's going to take over for Ted Thompson. So like, good on him if this is true to improve all of this. But a big thing here is even after airing his grievances, Rodgers felt like Russ Ball was the only one to really try. And that leaves out Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, Matt LaFleur, etc. And, you know, after trading for Randall Cobb, because the article talks about this too, that Brian Gutekunst basically made a concession, made a trade he didn't want to make, and brought back Randall Cobb, Gut might have been feeling like, hey, I did the thing. Like, you said you wanted your friends back. So, like, maybe I'm not the best at communicating yet, but I brought you your friend back. And it totally reminds me of a movie years ago, I think it was called like The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, where the crux of the argument, right? It's like one of the big arguments in the movie, and Vince Vaughn has done nothing all day, and Jennifer Aniston says to him, I want you to want to do the dishes. And he goes, why would I want to do the dishes? Right? Like this classic argument about what is the core root of the issue. And it could be Brian Gutekunst sitting there going, I brought your friend back. What do you want? And Rodgers goes, but you didn't want to bring my friend back. And oftentimes, we all know in life, when you can't get to the actual like cause issue, it's probably not going to be solved. So moving on from there, Rodgers did also use this opportunity, this part of the interview, to take a little pot shot at Green Bay, saying with the exact quote here, it still wasn't anywhere near what I've already enjoyed here with the Jets in just a few short weeks. Yeah, of course Rodgers is going to say that kind of thing. Have you seen Rodgers? He's all smiles as of late. Everything's great with the Jets. But here's the thing, and as far as I'm concerned, Rodgers is at a place now that's all warm and fuzzy, and he's the savior, as opposed to being a part of the team in Green Bay, a part of the solution, one of the soldiers on the ground, right? It's savior versus soldier. And of course, when he goes to New York and Joe Douglas and Woody Johnson and company is sitting there going, who do you want us to sign? Alan Lazard? Yep, you got it. Randall, oh, you want Randall Cobb back too? Yep, you've got it. Yep, you want this one too? Yep, you got it. Oh, we should make a call for, okay, OBJ got paid. Sorry, bud. But no, we'll do this one. Oh, you want Billy Turner? Sure. It's a lot different than one of his final meetings with Brian Gutekunst, which we do know about, where he said, hey, I want all my friends back, and the Packers were like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Of course you're going to feel more heard by the party that's doing everything you want them to do, right? Moving on to the next section, of course, this is also getting a ton of headlines today, the whole Christian Kirk, Davante Adams thing, because in this article, Aaron Rodgers talks about what happened with Davante Adams and that now infamous $18 million offer that the Packers made to one of the premier wide receivers in football. And, you know, ultimately, one of the quotes in here from Rodgers that I'm just going to read direct is, not a quote from Rodgers, I should say. This is a quote from Schneidman. This is what Schneidman wrote, because this is important, the differentiation. Schneidman wrote, but the quarterback thought his star receiver would stay. This is right after Rodgers inked his extension last year. Schneidman says Rodgers thought that Adams would stay. But I could swear, right? Am I losing it? I could swear that Rodgers at times has said that like he knew Davante was going to go elsewhere and signed the extension anyway. So little flying in conflict there. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, look, we're talking compensation for Davante Adams, right? And this article comps the fact that Davante Adams got offered $18 million by the Packers. And heck, that's what Christian Kirk got down in Jacksonville. Davante and Kirk are not exactly the same. Well, I mean, Kirk signed that contract for a year after I think Davante got the $18 million offer. Plus, the Green Bay Packers made it perfectly clear. We know that Davante wanted the Packers to honor DeAndre Hopkins' top of the contract, like spectrum, at $28 million. And the Green Bay Packers said, no, that's a false number, artificially inflated by multiple trades and stuff that's not actually what DeAndre Hopkins is making. So take it for what you will. At the end of the day, the Green Bay Packers probably didn't want to pay Davante Adams a top of the market deal. And of course, at the end of it, we know that the Green Bay Packers did go above Vegas's money at the time. Now, we don't know that it was also in top of guarantees or whatever, but even Adams himself has acknowledged, like, Green Bay's compensation level was higher than what he actually got from the Raiders. But by then it was too late. It was a Hail Mary ditch effort by the Packers to retain their receiver. And I think the argument can be made, maybe we'll jump into this a different time, but I'm not sure that the Green Bay Packers actually wanted Davante to take that contract. It might have just been a last-ditch effort to hope a good player would stay, but maybe secretly hoping he wouldn't take it for the sake of their cap. Or maybe they just wanted to continue to make Rodgers happy to make this all work after giving him a contract extension. So, next topic dealt with here is, of course, OTAs. Yes, the thing that are actually going on, the real life thing going on for the Green Bay Packers. I do have a couple updates about OTAs that I'm going to get to at the end of this video, but the topic of OTAs is, of course, addressed. And Aaron Rodgers basically goes on to say here, when I'm in, I'm all in. And you want to ride with off-season workouts? I won MVP without doing workouts. Like was my commitment any less then? I'd say not at all. The way that I come back to work, not just physically in good shape, but mentally refreshed, is the best thing for me to have the season I wanted to have during those in Green Bay. I think that's just a cop-out written to try and find something to disparage me about that. Honestly, when you know what off-season workouts are really about, it's completely ridiculous. All of this coming from Schneidman writing here. According to sources associated with the team, the Packers weren't satisfied with Rodgers' commitment and effort, not only during voluntary OTAs, but on a day-to-day basis afterward. Rodgers takes exceptions to the thought, and then that leads to the quotes that I just read. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we kind of suspected this. Like, the rumors of this have been leaked already, right? That the Green Bay Packers really felt like, hey, we're going to give you the biggest contract ever. And the Packers were sitting back feeling like, all right, that should be the it. Like, we're done with this. Like, do we love each other? Do we hate each other thing? This is the last ditch effort. This is our commitment to save the relationship once and for all. We're going to make you the highest paid player in NFL history. And Rodgers, of course, took it, as he should have, right? So, at the end of the day, we know that it didn't solve anything. We know that it still ultimately led to the end and perhaps even contributed to the end, this albatross of a contract. One thing that I will say that isn't in this article and Schneidman doesn't say whether he pressed, whether he asked at all, whatever, that I really wish was present was Schneidman asking Rodgers, hey, if OTAs aren't that important, why are you at him in New York? Because I know. He's at a whole new team. There's all new people. There's all new cultures. And I get it, 100%. It is a different circumstance, yes? And I'd be willing to forgive Rodgers for not attending. I didn't care that he didn't come in 2019. I didn't care that he didn't come in 2020, et cetera, right? But when you got an all-rookie wide receiving core, except for Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, you could make the argument that, you know, the people that you're doing your job with, that Rodgers has made a very large thing about over the years, maybe you want to spend as much time with them as humanly possible, even if it does sacrifice from your mental refresh a little. So, moving on, we're getting to the closing parts of the article now. A lot of just banter about, like, who called who and all this kind of thing. But here's what I have to say, okay? The communication, obviously, Brian Gutekunst has talked about this, Aaron Rodgers has talked about this. The communication between the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers this offseason was lackluster, to say the least. Now, we do know that Brian Gutekunst, on his trip out to California, messaged Aaron and said, hey, we should get together. I'm coming to Cali. And Rodgers acknowledges as much in the article, and he says, It wasn't like there was a date. We were for sure meeting at this time in this place. It was like, hey, I'm coming out west. I'm driving, whatever, you want to get together. And I said, yeah, I got a busy schedule. I'm working out. I got things going on. I got appearances, but I'd like to make it work too. Rodgers also goes on to say that when Brian Gutekunst sent that message, it's not like he waited 5 days to respond. It was either that night or the next morning, Rodgers alluded to actually responding to Gutekunst's text. But by the time that they got around to it, Goody was already gone. So again, Rodgers talks about FaceTime and the fact that his house only has 1 or 2 bars of reception, and people who really know me know that you gotta use FaceTime to call me and stuff. So whatever. And Rodgers goes on to say, before I went into the darkness, I hit him up and said, hey, there's some stuff swirling around here. We should get together, you, me, and Matt. Rodgers said he entered the darkness retreat thinking he would retire, but emerged feeling good about either retiring or continued to play. He contacted Dunn, who told Rodgers the Packers had been shopping him. Rodgers then told Dunn to tell Gutekunst he wanted to be traded to the Jets. He didn't have much else to say to the GM. Now here's the big quote from Aaron Rodgers that I think is incredibly revealing about this entire thing. Did Brian text me more than I texted him? Yeah, but did I ghost him? No. I texted him back. There was back and forths that we had, and so this is the story you want to go with? You're going to stand on this hill of austerity and say that arguably in the conversation of the best player in your franchise history, you're going to say I couldn't get a hold of him, and that's why we had to move on. Like, come on, man, just tell the truth. You wanted to move on. You didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Like, listen, I talk to the people that I like. And that would be Aaron Rodgers' mic drop on the situation. Look, we know for both sides. Was Brian probably over-exaggerating how often he reached out to Rodgers? Yeah, probably a little bit. I also personally believe that this line about FaceTime and not having bars, or does he have Wi-Fi in his home? Because you can just turn on Wi-Fi calling. Like, I'm not the tech savviest. Look at my setup. I take pride in not like being over the top with all the tech and the graphics and all that kind of stuff. I know you could do Wi-Fi calls. I know there's other means of communication. I know if he were ever to leave that house and go somewhere else, that all those messages would suddenly get to the phone and they could answer them. Like, there's ways around this. But, look. At the end of the day, this is a really, really well-written piece. And if you have The Athletic, I would encourage you to go read it. Because as I said, this is going to be one of those things that we come back to. But at the end of the day, really, it was time to go. The relationship had proven toxic. And the thing that really broke the camel's back was drafting of Jordan Love. And you can argue till you're blue in the face about whether that was the correct move or not. And maybe both sides throughout this entire thing convinced themselves that we want to work this out. Aaron Rodgers wants to retire a Green Bay Packer. The Packers don't want a repeat of the Brett Favre saga. They would love for Rodgers to retire. Maybe they just want him to retire now and get this done with so that they can move on to the guy that they believe is going to usher them into the future. Or they just don't want to have their cap strapped. Or they don't want to deal with having to FaceTime their franchise quarterback anymore, or any of the other crap. But they ultimately still wanted to make it work, right? So they convinced themselves that they could. But maybe if both parties were being honest throughout the entire course of the last 3 years, maybe in their heart of hearts they didn't actually want to. I've talked on this channel a bunch before about how Brian Gutekunst has given the appearance of a guy who has just kind of pushed and pushed and pushed and wanted Aaron Rodgers to be the bad guy to say, get rid of me. And I've talked before about how Aaron Rodgers has wanted to spin this entire thing to be, well, the Packers are just a bunch of arrogant jerks who don't do what their franchise quarterback wants them to do. So maybe they didn't actually want this to work. From Rodgers' side, his inconsistency, some of his questionable stories seem to indicate that he knows he did something here, right? Aaron Rodgers is, no matter what you want to say, he is a very, very intelligent human being. And maybe his leadership style doesn't work for everyone, but he is a good leader. We know that from tons of player testimonies. So he's a smart guy. He knows how people work. He knows. After that press conference with the Jets, when he got ripped apart for that FaceTime thing, you think he didn't see any of that? You think he doesn't know about that? And now today he's just going to rattle it off again and pretend like it's true? Like, no, he knows. He knows better. And from the Packers side of things, I don't doubt that they originally wanted him back. But something did turn, and Rodgers felt it. And I was saying even during the course of the year that the vibes around the team don't feel like a team that loves each other and wants to stay together. It doesn't feel like a team that Aaron Rodgers should be leading anymore. Because it's just negative and old and tired. So I don't doubt that they wanted to keep him around. And then he got paid. The Green Bay Packers were willing to do it. And as I said earlier, I think maybe that was their large gesture of like, we're done now. This is it. Well, I don't know what we're going to do with Love, but at least for now, we have Aaron locked up. And then it didn't get better. And the Packers, for their part, maybe Brian and Matt and all of them didn't really want to get better. You know, in the article, it does say that the Packers internally decided to spin the decision to draft Jordan Love to be Brian's decision exclusively. That Matt didn't really want a lot to do with it, so that the relationship between Matt and Aaron could still continue on. The Packers were manipulating all of these emotional shoestrings behind the scenes, hoping to keep their quarterback happy. And maybe at the end of the day, they were just freaking tired of trying to keep him happy. And maybe Brian and Mark Murphy and Russ Ball, even though Aaron's account of Russ Ball did get better, maybe they didn't want to become chummy with the guys in the locker room like Rodgers wanted. Maybe they didn't want to have a presence in the locker room. And other general managers in the NFL have talked about this before. That a lot of GMs purposefully stay out of the locker room because they don't want to grow chummy with the guys that they ultimately dictate the employability of. That if you're really chummy with the guy, that phone call about like, hey man, you're cut or you're traded, or we want to give you a pay cut, it's a lot harder to do when it's personal. So a lot of GMs stay out of the locker room. And Rodgers wanted more communication, more being around the guys. So maybe the Packers purposefully didn't get better in that realm for Rodgers. At the end of the day, and I know I'm saying that a lot because it's almost the end of the day, but I was reading a lot of discourse on Twitter about this. And Corey Banke of Cheesehead TV actually said what I think is incredibly insightful and adept for this situation, because people are going back and forth. Rodgers side, Packers side, are there two sides? Is there one side? Whatever. And he said, I would argue there are three sides. The reality that came to them, the reality they perceived, and the reality that they promote. Which is, I think, inevitably how this whole saga gets remembered. Super quick 1-minute update about OTAs today. Yes, OTAs were open to the media today on this beautiful Wednesday. As I said yesterday, from boots on the ground, they were correct. David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Preston Smith, all were back in town at OTAs today. The big absences were Rasul Douglas and Jerry Alexander, which is quite questionable because Jerry Alexander has a roughly $700,000 workout bonus, and Rasul Douglas has a roughly $300,000 workout bonus. So you'd think they'd want that, but they are currently not around by all accounts. And David Bakhtiari, if you happen to see the tweets, David Bakhtiari, in a very funny way, acknowledged, like, I'm here to get paid. That's why I'm here at OTAs. But he did round it out by saying, I'm having a great time here. I do have a great time when I come back, and I'm going to be whatever this team needs me to be. If they want me to be that guy that yells and screams at everybody, I'll do it. If they want me to be that guy that just shuts up, I'll do that too. It's nice to hear about that team-first attitude a little bit more often in the future, isn't it? Thanks so much for sticking with me. I know this was a long one today. I'll be back on Friday for our actual planned episode of players who may be taking a step back in 2023. Hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, go Pack Go.